Traditional economy. A traditional economy runs on customs that have been passed down through generations. The whole system revolves around subsistence farming and barter. You grow enough to feed your family, maybe produce a bit extra to trade with neighbours. Knowledge transfers directly from parent to child. If your dad raises sheep, you're learning to raise sheep. Career paths are predetermined by family line. Trade happens through obligation and relationships rather than pricing. You might give grain to a neighbour, not because they paid the market rate, but because helping each other out is just what the community does. Resources like land and water often belong to the entire community. You can still see traditional economies in indigenous communities, in villages in rural Africa and Asia, and some Pacific Island groups. The strength is stability and tight community bonds. The trade-off is virtually no economic growth, no innovation rewards, and opportunities locked in at birth. Command economy. In a command economy, the government controls everything. All major resources belong to the state. Central authorities decide what gets produced, how much, and what prices will be. The Soviet Union ran this model from 1917 to 1991. Maoist China operated this way before 1978 reforms. North Korea remains the closest thing to a pure command economy today. Government planners calculate how much steel the country needs, how many shoes, how much wheat, then assign quotas to factories and farms. The advantages are real in certain situations. Command economies can mobilize resources incredibly fast for war or massive infrastructure projects, but the disadvantages are severe. Planners lack the information to meet actual consumer needs. This leads to chronic shortages of some goods and massive surpluses of others. Soviet citizens stood in long lines for basic items, while warehouses filled with products nobody wanted. Without market incentives, productivity suffers and corruption flourishes. Market or capitalist economy. A market or capitalist economy is where production and pricing get determined by supply and demand, not by central authorities. Private individuals or firms own the resources. Producers respond to what consumers want and adjust based on price signals. When consumers want something, prices rise. Higher prices signal to producers they can make money by supplying that product. Competition forces them to innovate, cut costs, and improve quality. The advantages are significant. Market economies deliver high efficiency and growth. Free markets incentivize entrepreneurship, leading to rapid innovation and wealth creation. You get higher living standards and enormous variety, but the disadvantages are real too. Markets produce large income inequalities. Market failures like monopolies can emerge. Critics highlight risks of labor exploitation and economic cycles with booms and busts. Socialist economy. Socialist systems emphasize income equality and social welfare. Key industries are owned collectively or by the state. Wealth gets redistributed to ensure broad access to necessities. The Nordic countries like Denmark, Sweden and Norway have extensive welfare programs but also run capitalist markets for most goods. This works through high taxation and redistribution. Governments collect substantial taxes, then fund universal healthcare, free education, and generous unemployment benefits. The advantages centre on reducing poverty and providing universal services. Basic needs get met for everyone, not just those who can afford them. The disadvantages involve economic trade-offs. Heavy emphasis on equality can dampen entrepreneurial incentives. Critics warn of slower growth if high taxes reduce investment and innovation. Communist economy. Communist ideology calls for a fully classless society with all property held in common. In practice, these have been centrally planned command systems. The USSR, from 1917 to 1991, and Maoist China before 1978 are prominent examples. The theory is that if no one owns private property, there are no class divisions. Early communist regimes achieved rapid industrialization. Soviet five-year plans enabled quick expansion of steel production and military output, but the disadvantages became overwhelming. Without market pricing or profit incentives, central planners misallocated resources constantly. Citizens waited in famously long lines for basic items. Lack of incentives meant workers had no reason to be productive. The Soviet collapse demonstrated that pure communist systems underperform capitalist democracies in living standards. Green economy. A green economy is a contemporary concept focused on environmental sustainability. The United Nations defines it as low carbon, resource efficient, and socially inclusive. This means prioritizing renewable energy over fossil fuels, reducing pollution, and using resources sustainably. Investments flow towards solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles. Parts of Asia have launched green growth plans. The European Union has made carbon neutrality commitments. The advantages centre on preserving the environment and natural capital. New industries emerge around clean technology, creating jobs in solar installation and wind energy. The disadvantages involve costs and transition challenges. Rapid shifts away from fossil fuels can be extremely expensive. Industries dependent on coal and oil face disruption, and short-term growth may slow during restructuring. Cooperative economy. In a cooperative economy, enterprises are owned and run democratically by their workers or members. Cooperatives distribute both decision-making power and profits among the workers themselves. The Mondragon Corporation in Spain has grown into the world's largest network of worker cooperatives, with over 100 co-ops and 80,000 employees. Workers vote on major decisions and receive training through cooperative funds. Credit unions and agricultural co-ops also use this model. The advantages are compelling. Cooperatives distribute wealth more evenly and give employees real stake in success. The disadvantages involve practical challenges. Cooperatives face difficulties raising capital because they cannot sell shares to outside investors. Decision-making can be slower when every major choice requires democratic input. Mixed economy. Most of today's economies are mixed, blending market freedom with government intervention. Private enterprise dominates most sectors, but the state plays a major role in regulation and public services. The United States, Canada, and Western European countries all have mixed economies. Businesses operate in free markets, yet there are significant public sectors, including education, defense, and social security. The concept emerged after the Great Depression, when governments expanded intervention to prevent collapse. A mixed system harnesses market efficiency while correcting its flaws. Markets drive innovation, while government provides safety nets. The disadvantages depend on perspective. Critics argue government intervention leads to bureaucracy, higher taxes, and inefficiencies. The tension is constant about how much intervention is too much. Feudal economy. Feudalism was the dominant system in medieval Europe and Japan from roughly the 9th to 15th centuries. This was a hierarchical agrarian system based on land tenure and personal allegiance. A monarch granted parcels of land called fiefs to vassal lords in exchange for military service. Those lords permitted serfs to farm the land and kept a share of the harvest. Peasants were bound to the land and could not leave without permission. The system created a rigid hierarchy with kings at top, nobles and knights in the middle, and serfs at the bottom. Your position was determined entirely by birth. The advantages provided social stability during times of weak central authority. The disadvantages were severe. Feudal society was marked by extreme inequality, poverty, and violence. Economic innovation was limited because wealth was measured in land rather than production. Mercantilist economy. Mercantilism was an early modern economic system practiced by European colonial powers from the 1500s through the 1700s. It was based on the belief that national wealth came from accumulating precious metals, especially gold and silver. If you export more than you import, foreign buyers pay you in gold and silver. Therefore, governments should maximize exports and minimize imports. Governments imposed tariffs on foreign goods, granted monopolies to favoured companies, and established colonies to provide raw materials. England's Navigation Acts forbid colonies from trading with rival nations. Colonial trade had to flow through Britain. The advantages stimulated growth of manufacturing and shipbuilding in the home country. The disadvantages became clear over time. Artificial protectionism hampered consumer choice and raised prices. It often led to conflict among nations and uprisings in colonies. The system ultimately gave way to free trade capitalism in the 19th century.